Hey, it's Irreverent Aegis here. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to tank Unhallowed Grave hard mode. I'm going to start with the skills. Obviously, this is a Necromancer tank. However, I will talk in a general sense of what you might want on your bar if you run a different tank. First and foremost, you want your tank heal. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. In this dungeon, this hard mode, you take far more damage than probably in any other dungeon ever. You also want something that is going to give you minor protection. Here I use Agony Totem. That's a really good skill for me. It gives me minor protection. You can also use the Fighter's Guild ability, or you can even slot the minor protection ultimate from the Psijic, where if it's on your line, you're good. Anything else where you can mitigate damage, like Spirit Guardian here, decreases damage by 10%. Another option would be Defensive Posture. That morph increases your block mitigation by 10% on the sword and board line, as well as decreases the cost of blocking by 10%. That's a great skill if you don't have something like this on your bar. And then the last ability that I have that'll pop up in a moment is Empowering Grasp. This ability for a Necromancer is awesome. Not only does it apply minor maim to the boss, which is huge because this boss hits you really, really hard, but it also applies a 50% snare to whatever enemy I hit. And this snare is going to become really important as there is an empowered ad, or an ad that can be empowered if he reaches an empowering circle. But if he doesn't reach there or gets there more slowly, you have more time to chain him, or in our case, we have our healer run chains. We give the healer more time to chain that ad. So Empowering Grasp is awesome. In this build that I'm running, Empowering Grasp is extra good because it also gives everyone major resolve because I am wearing Mighty Glacier. Not a requirement, but it is very helpful. So anytime you apply a snare with Mighty Glacier, everyone gets major resolve in your group. So that really helps with group survivability as well, because everybody here takes a lot of damage. Last on my front bar, I have Glacial Colossus. I love this ability. It increases the damage that the rest of your team does by applying Major Vulnerability. Obviously, if you're a tank, not this tank, you can slot Warhorn as well. On the back bar, again, I like to have a tank heal on both bars just in case I get caught in a strange situation. This is a flex spot here. I run Necrotic Potency, just a little extra ultimate generation. Not a big deal. You can put whatever you want to there. The range taunt, I don't really run that much here because you don't really need a range taunt anything. Blockade of Frost, that is a really good option for you if you don't have like Empowering Grasp, because it also applies that snare, and also that ice damage is really helpful for also applying minor maim. And then Silver Leash, you will either be chaining in an ad or your healer will, but if your healer dies, you also want to have this available because making sure that ad does not get empowered is critical to this fight. And then on this tank, I also have Insta-Res slotted for emergency situations as well as my back bar ultimate. Now I'm going to go over some sets that you can run. If you are not a Warden, Mighty Glacier is awesome here for the reasons I just mentioned. Whenever you apply a snare or a mobilize or cast one, you give your entire group major resolve. Again, everybody here takes a ton of damage. There's a lot of AoE damage. And your group will likely die if they don't have some extra resistance. So this is awesome. One morph that I like to use of the sword and board line is Deep Slash off a Low Slash. That is, most people run Heroic Slash for minor heroism, but if you run Deep Slash, it's a 30% snare and also applies minor maim. So that can also proc Mighty Glacier if you use that skill. Earthgore, Monster Helm, really awesome set in here for two reasons. One, since you take a lot of damage and are going to be healing yourself, this is just a really big burst heal. But this set pairs extremely well with Eternal Yokita, which I think is an incredible set, especially here, because when you drop below 25% health, you heal for almost 15,000 and gain 100 ultimate. So this is huge, especially for a Necromancer, because I want to get ultimate as fast as possible for Colossus or an instant resurrection. But this is especially good because when you drop below 25% health, not only are you going to heal for 15,000, but this heal will also proc Earthgore and you get more heals. There is one attack that the boss does. A ghost hand comes out and hits you, and this hits you for, it's unblockable, and it hits you for a ton of damage, sometimes 40,000 damage, even if you have a lot of mitigation. And when that happens, this is going to heal you, and Earthcore is going to heal you, and you might just be back up to full health without your healer even doing anything. So I love Eternal Yokita with Earthcore. And obviously Mighty Glacier on the jewelry as well. If you are a Warden, you can pick and choose a different set other than Mighty Glacier. Otherwise, Mighty Glacier is something that I highly recommend for this fight. Alright, with that, let's get into the actual dungeon final boss. What's really nice about this hard mode is that the mechanics don't change a whole lot. Pretty much it's rinse and repeat for the first 50% of the boss's health, and then it's pretty much rinse and repeat for the second 50% as well. They only add one additional mechanic. Anyway, in the beginning, we just run in, drop all our ultimates as soon as possible, get a good burn early. It doesn't really matter a whole lot if you get a good burn or not. We just like to speed up the fight, because the boss at 80% will do his mechanic where he summons some adds. But anyway, here you can see that the group is pretty spread out. The reason being is that there's a lot of AoE damage. The boss does several attacks that hit really, really hard. Not only does he hit me hard, but he sends out AoEs in all sorts of directions. That Ghost Hand is unblockable. It puts you in the air, it stuns you, you can break free from it. But again, it's unblockable. If you aren't buffed up, if you don't have the boss maimed, if you don't have the empowerments from earlier in the dungeon, and some extra block mitigation, or some extra damage mitigation rather, you're going to take a lot of damage. Alright, we reach 80%. Here is the phase. The two DPS are going to run off and kill the skeletons that came out. What I'm doing as the tank, I'm running over and I'm hitting that ad right there with a 50% snare. That 50% snare is going to make him walk a lot slower. We have our healer run chains. The reason why the healer runs chains here is because I'm too busy trying not to die from the boss because he hits so hard, and I'm also trying to keep him away from everybody else. So it's really easiest for the healer to chain him. The other reason is that if I try to chain that ad, sometimes the boss walks in my way and I can't chain him in time, or he'll hit me with that Ghost Hand and I'll be stunned or in the air and I won't be able to hit him. So that's what we do there. So he goes into this phase pretty regularly after the first time. So again, rinse and repeat here. The DPS are going to go off and do their thing to prevent the mini skeletons from empowering and coming in and blowing up. I am going to not die, and I'm going to apply that snare. Whatever snare you choose on your bar is fine, and I will allow the healer. That allows the healer time, because there's like a 4 to 5 second cooldown on how often you can chain. Immobilizes aren't as good on that, because an immobilize will prevent him from being chained. So immobilizes tend to be bad. Snares, 50% snares, 40% snares, 30% snares tend to be better. There you can see I'm taking quite a bit of damage, and Earthcore procs on me, which is really nice. And again, you can see a lot of the AoEs going around. One thing that I like to do when I tank this guy is I do a lot of call-outs. So I pretty much am going to be telling the healer, hey, we're either by entrance or we're by what I call exit. So that it's easier for him or her to locate that ad, because I am always looking at the boss so I can see where he sends all of those ads. So this is pretty straightforward from here until we get to 50%. Nothing really changes. We did have our healer die there, which is okay. You actually have plenty of time in the first 50% to get a res. It's the last 50% where you get in trouble if somebody dies. But we're kind of making this look easy because we have so much mitigation, and we did do the side bosses for extra damage mitigation. It is really a lot harder than it looks because of the amount of damage that everybody can take. Alright, so one thing when those ads come up, you can just sprint away from the boss. He's pretty slow. He will not really catch up to you, and if he hits you with that hand, that's okay because the hand's unblockable anyway, so if it hits you with that, you're not going to die if you drop block. In terms of dropping ultimates, we tend to save our ultimates for that mini. If he reaches the empowering circle, let's say we don't chain him properly or chain him in time, or I do something stupid like drop a fear totem and make it impossible for the healer to chain him because of the cooldown, If he reaches that empowering circle, he will regenerate a ton of health really quickly, and he'll become very, very strong, very hard to kill, and he'll have a lot of resistance. He's actually a Sork and will actually turn on lightning for him, do a lot of damage. So that's bad. We do our best to make sure that doesn't happen. At 50%, he teleports, so we typically save our ultimates for that phase. That way we can drop the house on him. I run a Colossus, or Healer runs Warhorn. We actually have a guy in the group running War Machine, and then we have a Destruction ultimate. We want to do as much damage as quickly as possible here to make the fight go a lot smoother. Now, two things when that giant guy comes up back there. He does two attacks. He does an ice attack. The Ice Breath is going to attack pretty much the whole group, or wherever he's facing, so if we're all kind of in the same area, it'll hit all of us. I just call out block. The second attack is the one that we have to worry about. You can see him looking in a direction. As the tank, I try to orient myself so I can view who he's looking at, and I will call out roll dodge right before he drops that fire. If that fire lands on somebody, they die very, very quickly. There's a really big burning dot, and that hit hits pretty hard as well. So everything else is the same for this fight once you get to that second 50%. The only difference is now you have to worry about the giant bone Colossus over there throwing out fire and ice. But other than that, it's the same mechanic. We have to burn down that ad, not let him empower up, chain him back, like our healer's doing a great job of. One thing while we're doing this I want to point out, if you are running Stam Tunes, it's really nice if they run the medium armor skill to give them major evasion, because all the AoE damage here, that 25% mitigation is huge. So here he is doing another one of his phases. I call it exit, even though it's not really the exit. Healer runs over there. And again, I try to make it so I can see that bone Colossus at all times. I know where he's looking. I will tell my group, hey, it's looking at you, Izzy, and then I'll call out roll, or whoever is looking at. I do my best for that. That way, while they're doing their jobs, they don't need to pay attention to anything else. I think one of the most important aspects of tanking that gets overlooked is the tank really should be the one leading the group, doing the call-outs and all that, because that person's job is to kind of control the pace of the fight and to make sure that your group doesn't die. So I try to always orient myself so I have a good view of the field. I also do the call-outs for when we drop our ultimates. That way we have in sync the Colossus, the Warhorn, the Major Slayer, and all that stuff. Here we could have chosen to just burn the boss, but we didn't want to maybe chance those guys empowering. We were kind of close, around 8%. If we could burn that 8% before those skeletons reached, we would have been good, but we were doing a pretty good job here anyway, so why risk ruining the whole run? Just so we can kill the boss a little faster, because once that phase ends and we kill this big ad, this is going to go rather quickly. So we drop our ultimates there, and the fight is pretty much over. I know we made this look easy, but again, the biggest thing is being consistent, not letting that big ad reach the empowering spheres, and having a lot of damage mitigation on your bar.